Mr. President, when the government shuts its doors, public attention often falls on our national parks. This should be surprising to no one. Year after year, whenever anyone does a survey to discover the most popular and least popular parts of the federal government, the answers tend to be the same. As I recall, the least popular parts often focus on the IRS for understandable reasons. For similarly understandable reasons, the most popular parts involve our national parks system. And so when the government shuts down, a lot of attention turns to them, as it should. The stark closed sign that barricades the entrance to our cherished parks is more than just a sign in those circumstances where it arises during a shutdown. It's a palpable consequence of a government bereft of funds and a dysfunctional process in Congress that leads to that moment. This issue is close to the hearts of a lot of people in a lot of parts of the country, but it's especially close to the hearts of the people in my home state of Utah. Every state in this great union, especially every state that's fortunate enough to be home to one or more of our nation's national parks, has to deal with some of these issues in one way or another. Now, to be clear, I abhor the notion of government shutdowns. They are neither my wish nor my aspiration. However, as the close of FY 2023 approaches, a government shutdown looms very large on our horizon. Utah, like many states, finds its identity intertwined with its magnificent landscapes and national parks. Zion, Bryce Canyon, Arches, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, these are not just names on a map. They're proud symbols of our state, and local communities in many parts of Utah depend on them and depend on the traffic that comes in and out of those national parks. Visiting these parks isn't just about tourism. It's about livelihoods, our families, and our economic lifeblood. The grim reality is that our communities will bear the brunt of these parks closing, if in fact they close their gates due to a shutdown, with no means to recuperate the loss. With just 2 days left, my frustration mounts, knowing the Department of Interior has not updated its shutdown contingency plan for national parks since 2017. How can the Biden administration expect our communities to prepare without a blueprint for such eventualities? In my recent communication with Secretary Haaland, I've emphasized that numerous tools lie at her disposal to keep our parks functioning, even during a shutdown. Using the Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act, or FLREA as it's known, to harness non-appropriated fee revenues for essential park operations is a clear path and one that should be pursued here. After all, these very same funds ensured many parks remained open during the December 2018 to January 2019 shutdown. The Department of Interior should also designate as essential as many park and land management employees as possible. Yet, it seems Interior would instead echo past mistakes, like those made in 2013 under the Obama administration, bending to radical environmental pressures and closing our parks under the pretense of quote-unquote resource conservation. This is not just unfortunate, it's inexcusable. In fact, it's deplorable, and it's completely avoidable. Because of such actions, several states, including Utah, were forced to dig into their own pockets to ensure their parks remained open in 2013. But when the shutdown concluded, there was no repayment. States like Utah, New York, Tennessee, South Dakota, Colorado, and Arizona were left holding the bill. Utah alone spent $1.6 million to keep our parks operational for just about a week. Now, look, $1.6 million might seem like a drop in the bucket in the vast sea of overall federal spending. But for states like Utah, with a lot less money running through the state government than runs through our government every single year, and where our elected officials value prudent financial management to help keep their own citizens in a good position. Every single dollar matters. And so this is not something that we should foist upon the states. Look, we know at the outset that people are going to continue to visit national parks. There's no legitimate reason, knowing that they are the single most popular feature of the federal government, arbitrarily to decide at the outset that we're going to close those. In many instances, they had to erect barriers to keep people out, which is sort of the opposite of what you would expect to occur during a shutdown. So let's keep them open. We know in any event that any furloughed staff within the Park Service will be repaid along with the rest of government workers once a shutdown ends. Knowing that as we do, and knowing that these states and their communities are so dependent, as they are, on revenue related to visitors going to national parks, and that those states, being that dependent, are going to cover the tab, the federal government shouldn't be in the position of riding on these states' generosity, on their dependence on the national parks, simply by saying, yeah, you know what, we're going to furlough these workers, allow it to shut down, allow the states to run the parks at great expense to those states, and then not pay them back. No, Mr. President, this is unacceptable. This is a pretty unique circumstance in which the risk of a free rider action calls out for precautionary action on our part. So, Mr. President, my bill on this subject is very simple. It just mandates that the Secretary of the Interior must repay states that spend their own funds to maintain national parks in the event of a shutdown. It's about responsibility, accountability, and most importantly, doing what's right. Our national parks must remain open, not just for the enjoyment of our citizens, but for the survival of the communities that are near them and whose economies revolve around them.